legal expert and volunteer firefighter, manager and climate fresque facilitator, business manager and mentor. At BNP Paribas, every employee has a unique career path and specific unexpected community engagements. In this podcast, we'll learn more about the commitment of the men and women from across the world who are working, each in their own way, towards a more inclusive, durable and sustainable society. We asked them to tell us their stories, and they shared them with us via voice notes. And that is what you're about to hear. Welcome to Unexpected People, the podcast that'll make you want to help others.
My friends now often think of me as a person who's really concerned about the environment in many aspects of daily life. My husband and I are far from a perfect family in terms of our carbon footprint, but we do ask ourselves questions and we talk to our children about it. We try to consume less, we use things for as long as possible, make repairs, and always ask ourselves what we really need. We also limit the purchase of packaged products by buying in bulk or by making our own.
I'm personally a little hyperactive. For 15 years, I've practiced capoeira and kung fu, lots of self-defense, notably a discipline called pencac silat. Apart from that, I also do rollerblading and I'm currently learning to dance as well, so that's pretty cool. Sport really acts like a release valve for me, especially as I'm disabled and was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in 2017. It all started because I couldn't write well or very fast. I started wondering about it and then turned to science. I went to see a doctor who told me that, unfortunately for me, I had developed a form of the disease when I was only 33.
Virginie is head of legal for Australia and New Zealand at BNP Paribas in Sydney, and Hervé is a wealth advisor at a BNP Paribas branch in Paris. When they're not working, both are deeply committed to causes that are close to their hearts. Virginie is involved in environmental issues through the Climate Fresque. Hervé is involved in disability issues through running the Disability Strikes Back game at BNP Paribas. The aim? To pass on to their colleagues their knowledge and experience of disability and climate change in a fun and caring way. In this new episode, you'll discover the most sensitive subjects can be tackled in a fun way, and that you can encourage empathy and change in the workplace.
When I was diagnosed with Parkinson's, I said I knew it. And the doctor said no. No one knows when the disability will strike. I thought that 33 was a bit early. They could have made a mistake in the diagnosis, but unfortunately for me, it was confirmed. What I did was tell my manager first. It was quite natural because we trusted each other. I simply said that I had Parkinson's disease. It's well known. We all know what it is. I simply wanted to give them some details so they could understand the difficulties I could have in my work and the impact this might have. Problems concentrating and managing my emotions and stress. I got tired more quickly, knowing that the workload never diminished. I had to adapt, and the structure, BNP Paribas and my branch, simply had to do what was necessary to adapt to. After that, I was put in touch with a social worker in the BNP Paribas group who helped me enormously with the administrative formalities for the MDPH, which recognizes disabled workers. The social worker really helped me tremendously, and I felt much better afterwards. I confided in her and asked her for help to find things that would help me escape this lonely pattern of illness. That's when she told me about Rémi Thelou and the Disability Strikes Back workshop.
I've been aware of environmental issues for a long time. When I was younger, I studied environmental law, and later, in 2010, when I was in Paris, I took a distance learning degree with the University of London. It was a bit of a hobby at the time, because I wanted to understand environmental issues better, but it really helped me to integrate environmental aspects into my general culture. Much later, I discovered the Climate Fresque thanks to a colleague in Hong Kong who invited me, without explaining much beforehand. She just said that she knew it would interest me. I got an invitation, and since I trusted her, I took part in the climate fresque. I already knew a bit thanks to my degree, but I learnt a lot about the connections between the different elements of climate change.
Virginie and Hervé's first experiences of the climate fresque and the Disability Strikes Back game were as participants. These fun group workshops lasted around 3 hours and are organised into several stages. The climate fresque uses collective intelligence to raise awareness of climate issues based on reports from the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Virginie was won over by this first fresque.
As it's a group exercise, it's based completely on collective intelligence, on working together. So each participant really contributes to the project, and that's what I particularly like about the fresque. After that first fresque, I decided to become a fresque facilitator too.
Hervé took part in the Disability Strikes Back game after the BNP Paribas group social worker put him in touch with Rémi Tellou, a group employee and creator of the game. The aim of this immersive game is to give players insight into the day-to-day life of someone with a disability and to encourage people to talk about it. This first encounter was an instant success for Hervé.
The game is great fun, and given my personality, I think it's a really good approach. It demystifies things a bit, especially when it comes to the formal side, because the subject is so heavy and we can often be a bit apprehensive about dealing with it. Also, 3 hours may seem a long time, but it's actually really fun and so well done, thanks to Rémi's videos, which are funny and well thought out. There's a bit of music too, so it goes by quickly. After that, I started training to become a facilitator.
Virginie and Hervé both attended 1 to 2 day training courses to acquire skills and working methods. Since then, Virginie has led around 10 fresques between Hong Kong and Sydney. As for Hervé, he started to work as part of a pair, co-leading a Disability Strikes Back workshop. At each stage, BNP Paribas has supported them by giving them time off work to carry out their awareness-raising activities. The day of the event arrives, and it's the first time for both of them. Hervé and Virginie share the same excitement, the same desire to meet the participants and share their knowledge, their training, and for Hervé, the presence of Rémi Tellou as a co-host has given each of them the confidence to carry out their mission for the day. Their experiences this far have taught them that it's important to stay positive.
The first time I co-hosted Disability Strikes Back was in January with Rémi. When I wake up in the morning, my eyes sparkle and I'm in a good mood. I know I'm going to help people and also share a bit of my story with them. And beyond my story, it's more about sharing. Sharing experiences is really what gets me going. And afterwards, I say to myself, they're going to be able to understand this disability better. Afterwards, when I talk about acceptance, we don't necessarily accept it as a blessing because it's not a blessing, but we try to accept it as much as possible. Because, unfortunately, you have this sort of disability all your life, but it doesn't have to be dramatic. You have to try to live with it. So when I arrive, I prepare the ground a little. I arrive early, start setting up, getting the tables in position, preparing the computer and putting the cards in place. That helps to set the scene a bit. And personally, I always prepare myself mentally to welcome people and talk to them. Once everyone is there, at the beginning we look at each other a bit, but then as soon as we start, we're totally immersed. There's a presentation of the game, an introduction to set the scene. After that, everyone introduces themselves and talks a bit about how they feel about disability from near or far and tells a bit of their story.
The first fresque I facilitated was on my own in Hong Kong with a group of colleagues I knew well. I organised the fresque between 5 and 8 p.m. so that it wouldn't interfere too much with the working day. Now, I had 2 main concerns. The first was that I wouldn't be able to manage the organisation, the timetable, or follow the climate fresque recommendations. My second apprehension was that I'd be asked a question I didn't know how to answer. I studied all the fresque documentation for hours and hours, listened to the podcasts, watched the MOOCs before coming to this first fresque. I went into the room at around 4:30 p.m. to put the papers on the table, prepare the fresque cards, set up the markers and make sure everything was ready in terms of materials. I also brought a few chocolates to give them a bit of energy and lift their spirits. The participants arrived, 8 of them, and they all knew each other. That was great. It creates a very positive dynamic right from the start, but it can also be a bit of an extra challenge for the facilitator, for me, to avoid digressions and discussions, because at the end of the day, when you know each other well, when you're colleagues, you want to have a bit of a chat with each other. So that's a bit of a risk with this format. And the other thing is, from time to time, there's a need to bring in a bit of discipline, to ask people to refocus on the subject and stay adequately concentrated on the fresque.
Hervé and Virginie started to find their feet as they went along. First of all, they had to embody their roles as facilitators, which is not as simple as it sounds. They had to learn to guide the group without influencing their decisions too much and share knowledge without being too formal. A balancing act they eventually pulled off brilliantly.
During the fresque, you have to guide participants and not interfere too much. That's something I already do in my job. I run meetings. Also, explaining a complex subject in a simple way is a bit like the role of a lawyer. I think this aspect already resonated with me to some extent. There's almost always one participant who's got incorrect information on a subject, but who's completely convinced about it. That's where collective intelligence is pretty cool to see in action, rather than having a facilitator say you're wrong, because generally we try not to do things like that. In the end, the group, through discussion, will make the person realise for themselves that what they believe to be true is not necessarily true.
What's really interesting for me is the interaction. Interacting with people, talking to them, and with this game, people need extra help. I mean, certainly, it's also about sharing experiences. As it happens, Rémi and I worked very well on this co-hosting because people were very happy to be here. At the beginning, there can be a bit of a reticence, which is normal. It's a heavy subject. After that, people may be afraid to talk about it for 3 hours, but in the end, as the game progresses, we become so relaxed that people actually relax. We make fun of ourselves regularly, we don't take ourselves too seriously, people relax a bit that way. On the other hand, we're talking about serious things, but we always do it in a benevolent and confidential way, with an approach that is educational and a lot of fun. So the message gets across really well. At the first workshop, I joked with them. I told them, my life hasn't actually stopped. It's true that I've experienced disability, but my life hasn't stopped. On the contrary, I found new talents. Because now I've become a mayonnaise champion. I can beat eggs and beat them until they form peaks, add ingredients, and so on. I can turn it really quickly. That really lightened the mood.
Participants go at their own pace and without judgment. Virginie sees this caring environment as the key to successfully completing a climate fresque.
As an introduction to the fresque, I always start by saying that we're all on a journey. Our relationship with climate change is a very personal journey for each of us, and we're all at different places on that journey. I don't see the fresque as proselytizing. There's no wish to impose an opinion on anyone, to convince or offend anyone. It's just about sharing knowledge, and then everyone can do what they want with that knowledge.
As for Hervé, he accepts all questions and comments because the message he conveys goes well beyond taboos.
After that, if there are questions that seem a bit strange or intrusive, I'll reply to them. I have no taboos. I always answer in a friendly and fun way. Illness and disability fall upon us, and we learn to live with them and discover our new powers.
The feedback from Virginie and Hervé's first workshop was very enthusiastic. Despite the topics addressed, which can evoke an emotional response from participants, the personality of our two facilitators has inspired a desire to take action.
Almost systematically, some participants react by saying, "I feel depressed," and the fresque is actually designed to address those emotions, so they can be discussed, and to move towards a discussion that allows participants to leave with a more constructive point of view and to feel more able to act with more agency, rather than just feeling depressed and powerless. I think that's why, after almost every fresque, at least one participant will raise their hand and say, "I'd like to train to become a fresque facilitator." Sharing knowledge is a way of taking action. I'm sure that's why I became a fresque facilitator. For me, it's like being a link in the chain, which means that if we keep doing fresques, we'll have informed enough people to trigger change.
At the end of the game, people were super happy, and so were we. Some of them even recommended it to colleagues. They loved learning, but above all, they loved playing. It's really about the dynamics of the game. You can't take yourself too seriously because that puts people off. Besides, we're at work. Normally when you're at work, you have to be serious. This is a moment away from work, a break. Even though the topic is quite important here and we have to be very clear, that doesn't stop us from being relaxed and answering questions in a simple way. What's more, we have an informal chat at the end of the session. People come up and thank us. They may even have additional questions, and we're always happy to answer them, whether it's Rémi or me. And we're still doing it and will continue to do so.
After these 3 emotionally charged hours, Hervé and Virginie return home and then to the office. They feel they've done their duty, and they continue to spread the message.
At home, I talked a lot about the fresque with my family, and even with my extended family. It's inspired them too, because after that, my children and my husband took part in a fresque. And at the office, we soon started talking about doing another fresque with a different group of participants. One of my colleagues became a fresque facilitator themselves, and since then, others have joined. I'm so proud to have given them the desire to spread the message and to become a link in the chain.
When I got home, I told my children that Dad had helped people learn more about disability, and they were happy. They were a bit worried at first. They were afraid that I'd be ignored because people in general tend to be quite judgmental. But I reassured them straight away by telling them that when you're kind and when you give love, you can only receive it in return. Back at the office, it made some of my colleagues want to take part in this workshop. Some of them were a bit apprehensive because it required them to be comfortable speaking in public. But really, once they got over that fear, they loved taking part in the game.
For both Hervé and Virginie, it's been deeply satisfying to be able to take part in these workshops. These have given them concrete expression to their commitment to a more inclusive and environmentally responsible world. Their fellow employees at the BNP Paribas Group are able to participate in workshops on various other topics, such as circular economy, mobility, and water management. In the future, Virginie would like to take part in the fresque around biodiversity issues. As for Hervé, he can see himself leading the Disability Strikes Back game abroad. Both of them are keen to give a stronger voice to this freely expressed and committed message. This was Unexpected People, a podcast by BNP Paribas. Written by Helen Carbonell, hosted by Sara Woodcock, edited by Benjamin Massé, and produced by Lakme. Original music by Simon Zrak.